Okay, so just a little bit on the format and the content, I suppose, of this evening. What I suppose the reason for gathering you all this evening is to try and ensure that you are aware of all of the support and resources that are actually out there for clubs. Now, I've spoken with a lot of you over the last few weeks, and I know that some of you are aware of a few of these potential avenues of support. But as I said, even if there's just one or two things that you can take away from tonight, hopefully that you'll find it beneficial. But as I said, we just felt that it was the right time now to make sure that all of you as clubs and individuals are aware of what the support is out there. So I've kind of detailed it almost into three sections. The top section, which will probably be the main bulk of this evening's meeting, is around the support relating to the coronavirus and the situation that we're in at the moment. Some of that is internal football support, some of that is from external sources. What I also wanted to touch on was grants and support that is continuously available, because despite, as I said, these grants and resources being available for quite some time, there are some individuals, probably due to the fact that there's turnover of volunteers or whatever that looks like, that may be not aware of some of the grants and the resources, and especially with some of the recent changes that have taken to those. And then third and finally, I just wanted to very quickly touch on some of the other support and some of the other resources and things that are out there that may not necessarily directly be financial, but that can support your clubs, coaches and volunteers. So again, hopefully that part will be beneficial. The first thing to kind of make people aware of is the Sport England Community Emergency Fund, which was released in March, so has been open for about 5 to 6 weeks. It was a 20 million fund, which was, as I said, launched in March, and is there to directly support sports organisations who are obviously experiencing challenging times financially due to the ceasing of operations. So as you can see on the slide, grants are available varying from £300 right the way up to 10,000. And the application process is still very much open and it's still to the 31st of July. One thing to probably mention on that is that you can claim for expenses that may have occurred prior to your application. So for instance, if you were to apply today, you can backdate claims right the way back to the 1st of March. So again, that might be something that's of interest. Just for a bit of background, at the moment, we have had a large number of football submissions. So this is nationwide because they're not able to do it by county at the moment. But we have had almost 1,900 applications, which accounts for about a third of all applications that Sport England have seen. And the really positive news is, of those that have been reviewed, just under 75% have been accepted. So effectively 3 out of every 4 applications are being accepted, which is really great. So it means that the clubs are getting help. One thing that we're not actually able to get information from Sport England, and probably won't for another month or two, is what clubs are actually applying and which clubs have been successful or unsuccessful. So what would be really helpful is if there's any clubs on the call that have applied for it and either were successful or unsuccessful, if you could just detail that in the chat. And again, that would be really helpful for me to understand, and also again kind of identifies who of our clubs are in real need of this funding. So in relation to elements that can be funded, as I said, there's kind of four main things, which is around rent, utility costs, insurances, and staffing costs. There are obviously or were previously things around maintenance, but we'll come on to that in a minute, and the reason that that's no longer in there. But those are kind of the 4 main categories that are kind of eligible for funding. Core staffing costs, I have had a few questions around kind of what that entails. We've had kind of a few examples from Sport England. So one of them might be that you have kind of a part-time staff member, and you have a facility that's in the middle of nowhere, and part of their role is to ensure security of that facility, and you feel that it's imperative that that role continues. That might be something. It might be that you started subscriptions early and you need them to manage that. So as I said, there are staffing costs that can be eligible, and that also applies to casual staff as well as kind of part-time and full-time staff. For those that haven't applied but potentially are now thinking about it, there's kind of 4 key things that the application's success is based on. Number 1 is financial need. So you really need to explain and provide evidence of what exactly the expenditure is being during this period, and what you as a club have tried to alleviate, but obviously still highlighting the fact that there is a real deficit there. So that's really, really important that is very clearly made evident. Number 2 is actually what you've done over the last 12 months and also what you've done over the coronavirus period. So what are you doing at the moment to engage and reach all of the community that you serve? So we're talking about different demographics, whether it be age, gender, ethnicity, or all of the different things. It's about you as a club and how many people that you reach and serve. We've touched on role you play already, and then the final one is consequences. So what would the impact be if funding's not received? So one thing they will have a look at is what effectively you've got in the bank, and they're not basically stating that if you have funding still stored away that makes you ineligible, but what they want to know is that if you have funding in there, what it's going to be used for. So you may have funding in there that is to be used for a sinking fund for a facility that you're in, or it might be for ongoing maintenance over the summer. But as I said, it's to understand what the impact would be if funding is not received. So that's the Sport England funding. I'm not going to stop for questions at the moment. I'm going to go through this fund, and then we can stop after that to see if there's any additional questions on the chat. So this is a really hopefully bit of exciting funding information for everyone. So many of you might have received an email today from the Football Foundation basically explaining that there is a new fund available from today. As you can see, it's just over 9.5 million, and it's aimed at helping clubs and organisations get their pitches ready for the start of the season. It only opened today, and it actually closes on the 25th of May, and funding will be confirmed early June. So it's quite a quick turnaround, quite a short window. We're seeing a number of applications come in already. So first of all, I just want to talk about eligibility. Pretty much all of our football clubs will be eligible. So that is anyone who is considered grassroots football, so Saturday and Sunday teams, including Step 7. Also those in the National League system and in the Women's Pyramid, as well as our community trusts. So pretty much if you're an organisation that offers community football, then the likelihood is that you'll be eligible from that perspective. From a facility perspective, what they are asking for is 12 months security of tenure. Now, many of you that will know previously, the Football Foundation normally ask for quite a bit longer, and also often a bit of evidence to confirm that tenure's there. What they're actually doing on this particular time is, whilst they will check retrospectively, is they are literally asking you to self-declare. And what you need to have is either a freehold, leasehold, or a license to say that you are responsible for maintaining the pitches over the next 12 months. So it's only over a 12-month period. So the funding that's actually available. So clubs with one pitch, and that includes a grass stadia or a 3G pitch, will be eligible to apply for £1,500. Clubs with 2 or 3 pitches will be eligible for £2.5, and then clubs with 4 pitches or more will be able to get up to £5,000. What they class as full pitches are 11v11 and 9v9, so they will count as full size. If you have mini soccer pitches on your site, that will effectively be classed as a 0.5. So you'd effectively need 2 mini soccer pitches in order to equate to 1 pitch, which would give you the £1,500. So again, normally with the maintenance grants and things that we've seen from Football Foundation, what they're looking for is they're looking for you to deliver works over and above what you're currently doing. That is not the case with this particular fund. This fund is just to ensure that you are doing some works on your pitches. So if you look through the list, you'll see all the aeration and all the normal bits. But what is a little bit unusual that they've put in there is things like line marking and grass cutting. Real basic works that probably the majority, if not everybody, will be able to do on the pitches during at some point over the summer. If you're doing any of these jobs on your pitches or any of these responsibilities, then you will be eligible for applying for the fund. There's a couple of other things I just need to make you aware of. There is some potential impact on other Football Foundation funding. So I know there's some clubs here who have obviously applied for the Sport England Community Engagement Fund that we've just spoken about. If your funding has been towards pitch maintenance, this would unfortunately make you ineligible. If you have Sport England funding that doesn't take into account pitch maintenance funding, then you are still eligible to apply. In addition, clubs who have received enhanced grass pitch maintenance grants, which is those people that would have probably received that in the last 2 or 3 months, and it's basically based around your PIP reports. So for those clubs that know what I'm talking about, will be aware whether they've had that particular grant or not. That unfortunately also makes you ineligible. One thing to caveat that with is that those people that have had that maintenance grant will be receiving a letter in the next week or so to confirm that that maintenance grant for the first year can be used a lot more flexibly. So obviously within that grant at the moment, there is works that are stipulated that should be completed. It is my understanding that that will be relaxed. And as I said, more to come in the letter. Having said that, if you have had the grass pitch maintenance grant but have an additional stadia pitch that wouldn't have been eligible for that particular pot of funding, then you can still apply. I know that's a little bit complicated, but those National League system clubs that have a stadia pitch wouldn't have been able to get the grass pitch maintenance grant will be able to access this, even if you've used your enhanced grass pitch maintenance grant for your community pitches. What I should also say is this will not affect clubs applying for other Football Foundation funding in the future, and for you National League system clubs, this will not come out of your Football Stadia Improvement Fund allocation. In relation to monitoring, there is going to be an auditing of some clubs just to ensure that the funding is actually going towards pitch preparation works. That will just be done on a small sample basis. So you may be contacted to just confirm the works that are being carried out and for some evidence. So please keep all your invoices and receipts. And then the only other thing that is required is clubs must complete a grass pitch assessment, which will be used using a digital assessment tool called Pitch Power, and it's an app. What that enables us to do is just gather some information on what the current condition of pitches are at the moment. So that would have to be done by the end of the year. So it gives you plenty of time, and we're looking at end of December for those. I am just going to stop there. Alistair, I don't know if we've had any questions come in on the chat relating to any of those funds at the moment.
No questions. A couple of people have kind of come back and endorsed the Sport England Fund.
Fantastic.
Roger Neal just saying it's very simple and easy to complete. And looks like we've got a success story as well from Aylesbury Vale Dynamos, who applied for a grant earlier on this year and have already been successful with it, with £3,000 grant.
Thanks very much for that, Ian. What I would say is, if you think the Sport England Community Engagement Fund is a simple application, the Football Foundation Pitch Prep Fund is a complete walk in the park. I have done a bit of a sample this morning, and I managed to do it in just under 4 minutes. I think the record that one of the foundation managed to do it in was 3.5 minutes. So it's a really straightforward application to complete. You can do it in an evening in between bits. It doesn't ask you for any technical information. You should have everything to hand. So it's a very, very straightforward application. And if you go onto the Football Foundation website straight away, you'll be able to see where that funding is. I will send the link out with these slides, but as I said, if you want to access that in the meantime, it's very straightforward to find. So yeah, so hopefully a good bit of news for a lot of you clubs out there. Moving on to some more good news, which has just been announced in the last hour officially, and that is for Berks and Bucks affiliated clubs. For the 2021 season, Berks and Bucks FA clubs will not be charged for affiliation. So you as a club will not be charged for your affiliation, and neither will any of your teams. Okay, so obviously you're normally charged at a club price, and then you have an additional cost per team. You will not be charged for the club or for the team, so it will effectively be no charge. In addition to that, the cost of your public liability insurance will also be covered. Okay, so there'll be no charge for your public liability insurance. That would also be covered. One thing that clubs will still need to cover is the cost of your personal accident insurance, which is obviously mandatory for your teams. However, this level has been upgraded for this season, and there'll be no additional cost for that upgrade. So for adult teams, it's upgraded to the intermediate level. And for youth teams, I believe it's the Superior Gold or Gold Superior standard. And again, there's no additional cost to that. So that would be the same charge as it would have been if you were just getting the basic cover. So again, really, really good news, hopefully. As I've said before, just to reiterate and show you some of the information relating to that personal accident insurance. So the minimum requirement now is intermediate, and that is going to be £30, which is the same as what the basic would have been. And as I said before, the youth minimum requirement is for Gold Superior, which again, you can see the difference in costings for the different youth age groups. Obviously, one thing to bear in mind is that obviously if you do want to go over and above and get the County Cover Plus, then you will need to obviously fund the difference for that. The other thing just to be aware of is the actual cost for public liability insurance has increased. Obviously, you won't see that this year because it is covered for this season, but that again is something to bear in mind if you do forecasts for the 21-22 season. If you're looking to forecast kind of a couple of seasons ahead, just something to bear in mind. Okay, and then the final area on this section again is hopefully something that the majority of you are aware of, and that is relating to the government business support that's available. What I've tried to do is split this in 3 areas. I'm not going to go through this in any great detail because I said hopefully you are all aware. The 3 things that obviously will support you if you run a facility is the business rates holiday. The small business grant funding, so it's 10k grant for clubs who receive small business rate relief. If you aren't aware of this or you haven't accessed this, I'd strongly recommend getting in touch with your local authority. What I would say is that some have been really proactive in that they've actually been contacting some of our clubs, and I know that some clubs have been really happy with the support that they've received from their local authority. But as I said, if you haven't, then my suggestion would be to get in touch with them, because I know that there's been some clubs that have been really successful in getting that grant, and the same with the cash grants for leisure clubs, which is obviously if your rateable value falls into those brackets that I've detailed on there. Again, In case that you do have employees within your club, there are some support available. Obviously, you'll be aware of the job retention scheme with obviously numerous people being placed on furlough, and the 80% grant to obviously pay for that salary. There's also the self-employment income support scheme. So for those individuals that you may support but are self-employed, please make sure that they're aware of that. I think that's probably applicable again, maybe to something like casual coaches, or as I said, individuals that work with or for you but aren't directly employed by you. And then obviously the final one is the statutory sick pay rebate, which is obviously due to any staff needing to be off because of being isolated due to coronavirus. The final area, I suppose, of business support is not something that's set up by the government, but it's actually done by the FA, and that's relating to legal guidance, and it's by the FA's partner Muckle. They have set up a number of blog and guidance tools based on some of the things I've detailed below. So whether it be membership subscriptions, contractual rights and obligations in relation to suppliers. One thing I've had quite a lot of is relating to facilities hire and people being charged when not using, etc., etc. So again, there's areas of support that they have guidance and blogs on. In addition to that, charter standard clubs and national league system clubs are eligible for 30 minutes free advice. And I have checked this. It's you can actually get 30 minutes free advice per matter. So obviously, if you have more than one issue, you can have more than one phone call. The information that we've been given is that we would recommend you getting as much information and detail before that call as possible, obviously to ensure that those people that are advising you can give you as much information and make best use of that time. Again, all these links will obviously be sent out with the slides, but yeah, there's a specific Muckle page around the coronavirus. Okay, that pretty much finishes the first section. So I'm just going to pause again for a moment, and I'm just going to ask Al whether we've had any additional comments or questions relating to anything that's come in that first part.
No, nothing new that's really come through. Just another success story around Grant, which was Didcot Town actually, who received a £10,000 grant from Sport England. So obviously looking at some really significant and helpful funds here. I don't know if you just want to pause in case anybody does want to drop a message into the chat. Just
that's fine. I'm happy to hold on for 30 seconds or so. So if anybody's got anything that they would like to ask or any feedback around anything that we've discussed, please feel free to drop it in that chat.
And in case anybody wants to chuck something in, I'm going to take this opportunity, considering you covered affiliation, to just kind of plug the around the affiliation. We will be sending more information on that out next week. Just a full annual update we do every year, just with the guide to affiliation requirements for the coming season, confirming dates and costs and so forth. And we'll be doing an online meeting very much like this next Thursday, just again looking at the affiliation regulations and kind of practical demonstration on what it looks like when you go through and do it on the whole game system, if anybody does want to join us for that as well.
That's great. Thanks, Al. Anything come through on the chat while we're
yeah, we've had one that's come through from Andrew at Datchet. Is B&B going to be able to help clubs claim money back from grounds owners or councils that possibly refusing to give them their money back from this season's fees? Probably comes in some of the guidance that's come through from Muckle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, as I said, if it's got to the point you've tried to have those conversations and it hasn't worked through your conversational channels, then as I said, Muckle would be the best point of call, because they're the individuals that will be able to have the knowledge and deal with these inquiries on a regular basis. So yeah, please make use of that 30-minute free call. Andrew, would be my advice to you. Perfect. Okay, well, as I said, please feel free to put things in the chat as I'm moving forward. As I said, we're going to get onto the next part, but as I said, even if it's relating to earlier slides, please feel free to put anything in there. So the next section, as I said earlier, I just wanted to ensure that all of you as clubs and individuals were aware of some of the regular pots of funding that we have available to us within football, and ensure that, as I said, that you are accessing it. So the first one I wanted to highlight was the Football Stadium Improvement Fund. So this is a fund that is effectively designed to improve stadium safety and enable clubs to obviously satisfy ground grading requirements. And as you can see, there is a maximum grant depending on what step or level that you play at. And you are able to apply for 70% of the cost of the total project within that. So as you can see, as I said, there's different amounts all the way through. The other thing that I would say is that you do not need to apply for all of that money at once. So you may do a project in year one that is 30k, and then come back, because obviously funds are challenging, to have an additional project that may be 20 or 25k, and you can keep doing that, and obviously it will just become a cumulative grant, as it says. So whilst it obviously is for stadium safety and ground grading, a lot of people kind of get confused by the Football Stadium Improvement Fund and assume that it's only worth looking at if you're getting promoted, because obviously the ground grading requirements increase. I would urge you to have a look at that particular page, because it covers such an array of different items that there is probably things that you are doing on a regular basis that you may be able to apply for. So as we said, I've listed just a few, but there are many more than this, ranging from hard standing areas, perimeter rails, upgrades to changing rooms, hospitality areas, so that includes your T-bars or your bar area, new dugouts. One thing I have left off there is floodlights. So you're not eligible to apply for regular maintenance around things like new bulbs, or as I said, additional other maintenance or increasing your lux. But if it's a case that your floodlights are deemed not to be of a suitable spec, then you can get funding for that. Also, if you're in a position that you obviously don't have floodlights, i.e. you're playing at step 7 and you're going to get promoted into step 6, then again, that is an eligible cost if you do not have floodlights currently. So again, really good fund for any of you clubs that are playing in the National League system. I'm assuming that most of you will be aware of the generic Football Foundation grants and probably applied for one of these pots in the past. But something that I did want to flag up this time is that there's been a bit of a change, probably since December, in the way the Football Foundation administers it grants, and also some of the terms and conditions on those. Previously, the feedback was that the applications were quite erroneous, that they took a long time to complete, that there was a lot more information to be put in there than was needed, when I only wanted to put one set of goalposts and it was taking you 3 months to come back and need to take a week to complete the application. So they have completely simplified the process for a lot of these different grants. So the ones in particular that I want to look at are storage containers, portable floodlights, goalposts and fencing, which are classed as are smaller grants. So what the foundation have done is they have increased the limit on these types of items from £10,000 to £25,000. And rather than it just be a 50% contribution, they're now willing to put a 75% contribution, which is obviously a significant increase when you get especially when you get towards that top end of funding. The other thing to flag up, particularly around goalposts, is previously it was only if the goalposts were unsafe and you had to provide evidence of that. Now it's a case that any club requiring any new goalposts can apply. Okay, so there's no requirement for them to be unsafe. It's just if you'd like to update your goalposts, you can apply. And the turnaround time for goalposts is happening within a week at the moment. So really, really quick turnaround, getting really, really good results from that. Because this is the first season that this has happened, although the coronavirus is slightly altered this, we were going to urge clubs to apply early for the goalposts. Slight concern is that if everybody applies in July or August for new goalposts, that the suppliers won't be able to keep up with the demand. So, as I said, I appreciate the circumstances we're in at the moment with the financial constraints that a lot of people are under. But if you feel the need that there is going to have to be goalposts that are going to be bought in at some point, I would just urge you to try and order them at the earliest possible point, so that, as I said, that you get them in time for hopefully when the start of the season comes around. There are obviously other grants. A lot of people I speak to around 3G pitches and changing rooms, and obviously they're still available, and they're what we consider obviously the larger capital grants. But as I said, on this particular call, I just wanted to focus on the small grants, because often they get, that they don't get given the attention they deserve, when you can still get fairly significant funds, and it's quite easy to access and can be quite quickly to access now. So again, just something for all of you to consider.
John, we've had a question that's just come in quickly around the goalposts. Question whether councils are able to apply for funding for grants and goalposts.
Are local authorities able to apply? I believe so. I can double check that for you. I know local authorities can't apply for a lot of it, but I believe goalposts is one of the things that they can be eligible for. The one way around it, and one thing that we've done with other items, that if the club wants to apply potentially, and then obviously the local authority can then obviously support the club in getting the new goalposts. So, but I will come back to you on that. I'll make a note of that question. Thanks, Al.
No worries, that came from Liz Barnett.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Perfect. Okay, so we're now on the final stretch. So as I said, this area is not necessarily relating directly to funding. It's just relating to other support and resources that are available to you. So I don't know if any of you were on the WebEx that Danielle Warnes did a couple of weeks ago, which was relating to business continuity planning. Is something that we, as the County FA, may look to kind of support further. But I just wanted to touch on it just to make sure that you were aware in the meantime. And that is for you to firstly understand what it is. So it's basically a document that sets out and gives you guidance on how to deal with the impact of a major incident, which obviously the coronavirus would absolutely come under. The FA have actually produced quite a straightforward template to use. For those of you that maybe are involved in this area of work as a profession, you've probably got far more sophisticated and in-depth models than this one. But as I said, for those that haven't gone through this process before, it's a really good tool to use. And I think what it does, and the importance of it, is it gets you as a club to look beyond these next 2 or 3 months. And I appreciate that can be challenging at this point in time. But there are also potentially other challenges over the next 12 months that we obviously will need to tackle. And that's things like potential reduction in sponsorship, potential reduction in player subscriptions if the amount of players that we get coming back into the game isn't the same. Potential reduction or restrictions on volunteers, particularly if we've got those that are vulnerable or older. We don't know what the restrictions are going to be on that. So all of these types of things that, whilst, as I said, we've got other challenges at the moment, particularly around finance, but we also need to have one eye on what happens in the next 12 months. And this document gives you a really good base in order to do that. So as I said, just running through this very quickly, it gives you a risks log. So basically that just asks you to think of any and all risks that you possibly can across a number of categories that are set for you. And then obviously what it will do is it will put it into a table which will highlight which are the key areas of focus based on your scoring of how likely it is to happen, obviously the severity of that particular risk. It will also give you some advice on things to think about when you're budgeting and forecasting. So it gives you a whole list of all possible income and expenditure for clubs. And as I said, that gives you a really good basis again to start forecasting what your new income may look like for next year, because obviously it may be slightly different than what you previously planned. And then almost it looks at your action plans in two different ways. One, as we've talked about a lot this evening, for now, over the next kind of 2-3 months and getting through this really challenging period. But also, as I've just touched on, what the future looks like and the fact that there may be some challenges and risks that are further down the line. So also want to focus on there. And then the final bit of support that I did want to speak about was our online coaching program. So we have been extremely proactive, and when I say we, I think that's probably be giving our education officer a little bit of a disservice. Richard Brandt, just a bit of a name check for that for you that have potentially engaged with him, has put together a fantastic program. I think the stats that he pulled out for me earlier were that he's put 33 hours of content on. We've had 11 different guests. We've engaged with about 1,500 different individuals. And we've had a range of different topics, from CPD sessions to podcasts, Q&As, classic match and reviews. It's fantastic. It's brilliant for your coaches to keep learning and increasing their knowledge. But also, if you have got people within the club that maybe are isolated and are living alone, it's a real community feel when you go on there. Communication's encouraged. Some of them are smaller groups, some of them are bigger groups, but again, you do get your chance to have a chat and have your say. So I would strongly recommend having a look at that or passing that on to your coaches within the club. Generally happen on a Tuesday evening, a Thursday evening, so there's one going on this evening, and then a Saturday morning. So go across the week, and yeah, really proactive piece of work from Richard. The other thing to make you aware of is that you will all have been communicated over the last couple of seasons, if you've got youth teams, that if you have a youth team without a qualified coach, the likelihood is that you may have had a bursary allocated to you. So we originally had over 500 bursaries allocated, and only 150 of these have been used. So if you are interested it's a full bursary for the cost of a level 1 course, please get in contact with us at info@berks-bucksfa.com. I haven't got the list to hand, so I can't tell you exactly which coach and whether your club has a bursary, and if so, how many. So please get in contact with us and we can let you know if you have an outstanding bursary that can be used. But as I said, you would have received, or your secretary would have received, numerous bits of communication about having a bursary. Have got a bit of any other business to go through, but before I do that, I'm just going to have a quick check on the chat. Alistair, anything else come in?
Yeah, there's one more question that had come through, which was just about where we can get details on the clubhouse refurbishment grants from the Football Foundation.
Okay, yep. So if you go onto the Football Foundation website, again, as I said, I'll send all these links out. There is a very simple button that basically says how to apply, and then you simply select, obviously, the changing rooms refurb. What I would say is, if it's a minor refurbishment, and when I say minor, under £25,000 that you're applying for, then please feel free to go through the application. If you are looking at more of a major renovation or rebuild, please get in touch with myself first, because the application will not allow you to go any further without having contact with myself, so that I can assess what the need is and also discuss likelihood of funding and partnership funding. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to go on to the final slide. So while I'm talking through, if you've thought of any other questions, please, as I said, feel free to put those in the chat.
One that's come through before you go on to the next one is just around whether the online coaching courses contribute towards a coaching qualification.
Not at the moment, unfortunately, although I did have a conversation with Richard yesterday, and it's something that we are looking into. But as I said, at the moment, they do not go towards CPD hours. But we are hoping that there will be potentially an event in the not too distant future that may be able to meet those requirements. Perfect. Okay, so final slide. So just a few very quick updates from me, and then I will just ask Liz, who is our Chief Executive Officer, who's on the call, Liz Verrill, and also Alistair Kay, who's our Football Services Manager that's been supporting with the chat, just if they've got any further updates. So first of all, Alistair mentioned it before. He has been running online webinars throughout the season, labelled #BBFA support. Covering a range of different topics to support volunteers within the clubs, ranging from, as I said, regular administrative duties to player recruitment, a whole host of different topics. And as he said, there is one next week on the 14th of May around affiliation and rule changes. Al, is that still the same topic, or is that changed?
No, it's still going to be around affiliation. That'll be couple of weeks before we open the window, so we'll be quite timely, and we'll cover kind of some of the couple of changes that there have been around some of the safeguarding requirements as well.
Fantastic. The second one is that we have had a number of different stories with clubs engaging with their community, some having fantastic ideas for how to keep their players engaged. Others have actually supported their local community with donations or food banks or a whole host of different support mechanisms. We're really keen to promote this and also promote the great work that kind of football's doing amongst this kind of challenging period. So what I would say is, if you do have any stories or any things that either individuals within clubs are doing, or you as a club have organised, please feel free to kind of copy us in or send us an email. We're happy to retweet it, and we may even, as I said, look at doing a bit of a news article with all of these great stories. So please do let us know. Next on the list, Grassroots Awards. So whilst the season wasn't what we necessarily hoped for, there's a lot of people that have put a lot of hard work and a lot of effort into this season, and not just this season but previous seasons. So what we're really keen is to still ensure that you as clubs, leagues and volunteers are all recognised for that great work. So the link, again, this will be another link that's sent round, will be open until the 18th of May. It's called the FA Grassroots Awards. So as I said, if you have got individuals or you as a club feel that you've done particularly well over the past season or two, please do nominate, because as I said, it is challenging times, and if people can get a lift and a bit of good news, I think it's kind of worth taking 10-15 minutes out of your time just to give them a nomination. So just a bit of a plea there. And then the final point for me is that we've had some communication from the FA that have basically said there is a large amount of club vouchers that are going unspent. So basically, every club that completes their annual health check will obviously get a voucher, as they do every year, for kit and equipment. I think last count there was over £100,000 worth of club vouchers that have gone unspent nationally. I know that we have a number of clubs that are on that list. So again, I think Alistair sent out an email to those clubs, but just as a secondary reminder, please do make sure that as I said, that funding is spent, and as I said, that you're making use of it. That's pretty much everything from me, apart from one final thing, which is just to give you bit of an update on the office. Many of you will have been in contact or tried to get hold of different individuals and may have had responses from a different person that you're trying to get hold of. In case you weren't aware, we have had to place a large portion of staff on furlough. We do still have 6 members of the team in the office. We are still able to carry out the majority of services that we would be doing at this time of year, other than obviously things like discipline, which isn't going on. But if you do need support, if you do have queries, then please do continue to keep in touch, because we are still here. We do want to engage with you, which leads me on to my very, very final point, and that is that we've delivered 3 of these now, these different workshops. One, I think, was for leagues that Alistair and Liz delivered. Another one was for clubs, and again, both of those were talking about how we wrap the season up. This one is obviously talking about support. We do hope to do some additional ones, maybe for specific roles. But if you do have feedback and you feel these are worthwhile, again, please do let us know. And what we don't want to do is, as I said, put these on for an hour or so if you don't feel they're viable or useful. As I said, hopefully you've taken something away from tonight, and as I said, hopefully the future ones will be just as useful for you. Before I sign off, I'm just going to ask Liz, first of all, whether she's got any updates or information that you'd like to get out to clubs, Liz, at this point.
Yeah, thanks, John. Not really. I think you've covered it. We're obviously very excited that we can offer affiliation for free this year. I think you know, it goes without saying that clubs have had a very bad time of it in the last few months. So to be able to give something back is really good. You were mentioning the online sessions. Just one for your welfare officers on Tuesday evening at 7. We'll be running a session for club welfare officers, be myself and Alistair, and it will be based around DBS's compliance and getting ready for next season. So if you're a welfare officer, if you are a welfare officer, or you can pass it on to your welfare officer, would really be appreciative of that. Apart from that, stay safe.
Brilliant. Thanks, Liz. Alistair, any other updates that you wanted to give out to clubs or anything to expand on?
No, like I said, we've got the affiliation WebEx next week. That's going to be the next big one from my end. We're continuing to, one of the big pieces of work we are still going through at the moment is around the health checks. We are in touch with anybody that is still, the health check hasn't been finished and signed off yet. We are in touch with everybody around that. But if you haven't had confirmation yet that your health check's been approved, please get in touch with us. So there's a question that's come through just around claiming the vouchers. So anybody that hadn't claimed their voucher for this season will have received an email from me about 2 weeks ago with their unique code and the link to where they can where they can redeem the voucher. What I don't know is whether it's then been sent out to anybody that has had the health check approved over the last couple of weeks. So I will double check on that, and I will get those resent out beginning of next week as well.
Fantastic. Just a final check. Have we had any additional questions?
No, it was just around
that. Nothing else in the chat. Perfect. Okay. In that case, thanks everybody for attending. I will hang around for a couple of minutes or longer, just in case anybody wants to hang on and ask any questions. But other than that, exactly as Liz and Alistair have said, please stay safe, and hopefully we'll speak to you all soon.